So, welcome to Power BI, Mastering the Art of Data Intelligence. My name is Greg Lutz. Today's class, we're going to talk about just a bit of a quick refresher on the fundamentals of Power BI. We'll also talk about advanced table relationships, dynamics, row-level security, and we're also going to talk about some of the different sophisticated DAX calculations that you can do. We're also going to dig into integrating R and Python and using different storyteller features, as well as talking about different complex DAX patterns and improving query performance, as well as some advanced time series modifications that you can do with DAX and predictive analysis. We'll also talk about how to automate data flows, leverage AI insights, and some advanced sharing options that you need to be aware of. First, a bit of an introduction. Power BI is a powerful business intelligence tool that allows users to more clearly understand and analyze their data. To get started, you're going to need a Power BI account and a license. You'll have to log into the Power BI service through office365.com. And from there, you'll use the different tools that can create customized reports, dashboards, visualizations, and that'll enable you to communicate in effective and engaging ways. Now, let's talk about complex data modeling. When you're working with multiple data sets in Power BI, it's really important to establish the correct table relationship in order to ensure that you have an accurate report. And by using advanced table relationships, you can create a more detailed and more insightful report that will help you make better business decisions and make it easier for your users to interact with. Power BI provides a variety of different relationships that you can choose from now. You have things like one to many to one, many to many, but understanding these relationship types is essential to building an effective report. The many to many, these would create relationships with each row in the table and would relate the rows with other rows in other tables. This can be quite useful for different scenarios, like tracking many to many relationships that may exist between a products table and an orders table. You can also create what are called inactive relationships. These relationships exist but are not used by default. And one of the ways of being able to switch that and change that and take advantage of it is by using something called use relationship in a DAX function. Something else that you have access to is bidirectional cross filtering. This allows for filters to be used in two directions between a table. This can be extremely powerful because it would only show you different records that exist in both tables. So almost like a one-to-many relationship. You also have composite models. These combine a direct query and import data sources, and it allows you to be much more flexible and scalable with the different types of data models that you create. First, let's talk about inactive relationships. A many-to-many would allow multiple rows in one table to be related to multiple rows in another table. In fact, it's going to look something like this. Here we have our three different relationships between two different tables. The relationships are created, and if I go to edit the relationship, you can see that the relationship is on the date key and the order date. More importantly, down at the bottom, there's a checkmark box that says the relationship is active. The other two relationships happen on the due date key and the date key, but again, more importantly, down at the bottom, you'll notice that the relationship, it's not active. And neither is this one. This is on the ship date. The ship date and the date key, again, have another relationship between each other, but the relationship isn't active. The end result is something that looks like this. And normally, without the use relationship or without the ability to make it active, these other two relationships, they wouldn't be useful. You'll notice that there's a solid line at the top and the other ones are a dotted line. That tells you they're not active. They're all one to many, so you have the one and the asterisk, but only one of them is actually active. When it comes to bi-directional cross-filtering, this is a very powerful feature that allows you to create a more dynamic and interactive report. By allowing filters to flow in both directions between tables, you can create a more detailed insight into your data. However, it is important to be aware that this feature can really affect your data model. It can affect the speed and also kind of leave users feeling that the data is very ambiguous. While bidirectional filtering can provide very powerful insights, it might not also be ideal in every situation. In large databases or those that have complex data models, the bidirectional cross filtering might lead to some slow performance or require extensive management of the relationships in the filters. However, with careful planning and management, bidirectional cross filtering can still provide some valuable insights to many companies. Here's an example. Here we have three different tables and a relationship between all three tables. The relationship is a one-to-one relationship. And, well, that's the type of relationship that has been created by default. You'll notice that the arrow that sits on the relationship is only pointed in a single direction. With many-to-many relationships, a bridging table is going to be required. So this type of relationship allows us to play with the filtering, whereas other types of relationships may require additional tables to be placed in between the tables. This is strictly for demonstration purposes only. You can't actually create this view inside of Power BI. When you're in that modeling view and working with relationships, it only shows you the table name and the fields. Here, what I've done is I've created my own view. So I've manually done this just to show you what's inside of the table. We have two customers, United States and Australia, but we have a sales table and a product table. So when I build a visual from this, the visual looks like this. This page consists of two slicers, a card. The first slicer is country and region, and it has two items on it. As we saw, Australia and the United States. Currently, it's selected Australia, and it shows us that we have 30 sales. It also gives us the impression that we have hats, jeans, and t-shirts. But when you select hat or jeans, it's not going to affect the quantity because there are no hats and jeans that we sold in Australia. By changing the direction of the filter, by using bidirectional filtering, the same report looks completely different. When Australia is selected, you'll notice that the only product that we have is the t-shirt. So now the product slicer lists a single item, which is the t-shirt, which is the only item that was sold to Australia customers. So you really need to consider whether or not this is something that you would use, because with large data models, this does become a little bit more difficult to manage. Some report users find the experience a little bit confusing, and they don't understand why slicers dynamically appear or disappear when they interact with other slicers. So if you do decide to use this, we recommend that you don't configure the bidirectional relationships for absolutely everything. It should only be for required filters where you only want it to show the items that exist in the resulting table. So turning it on for every single relationship is really going to impact performance, and it's really going to confuse people too. Next, I want to discuss row-level security. Copilot is an AI assistant that leverages machine learning and helps users to develop and produce better code. So when you're using Copilot, there's some really neat and interesting stuff that you can do. However, when it comes to locking stuff down, there really isn't anything that's intelligent that's going to tell you that only certain people need access to certain things. That's still a human thing. And that is where dynamic row level filtering comes in. It's a very powerful feature that enables you to restrict access to specific rows of data based on the user's credentials. This could be really useful if you have sensitive information that you only want certain users to be able to see. Row level security can be applied to both imported and direct query data. It can be configured to allow or deny access to under specific conditions. When you're using dynamic RLS, users access different dashboards and different reports, all based on their login credentials. This method is called row level security, and it's more complex than static row level security, but it's much more secure because it's dynamic. Using dynamic RLS it is possible to assign more than one role to multiple users. So multiple users could have multiple multiple roles in order to access different things. We all wear different hats sometimes, and you may have multiple roles in order to actually see the data that you need. This allows it to be extremely flexible. In this situation, we have two different tables, sales reps and transactions. And the idea is that you only want certain sales reps to see their own sales transactions. You don't want every sales rep to be able to see every sales rep's activity or sales. So this is what it looks like, just the raw data itself. Using something called use principal name, this DAX function allows you to check the logged in user. And of course, this allows you to view all users currently logged in and the part of the report that each report is accessing. So in other words, you can target certain users based on the user that's logged in and only show, based on their role, what it is that they need to see. In Power BI, you assign the user roles after the report is published, and it needs to be done inside the Power BI service. So in the desktop version, you head to modeling and create the roles. This is the screenshot of what it actually looks like. So from the manage roles window, the security roles window, you select new and you create a brand new role. Then under the roles, you provide a name for the role. You select anything else that you need to, but you can't define a role for a person with a comma. So you actually have to add each individual person's name into the role. For example, you can't define a role with a comma, and I wouldn't be able to put in something like London, comma, Toronto. So I wouldn't be able to put in multiple cities or multiple roles that would define what the person's allowed to see. You've got to do them separately. When you select the tables, you select the table that you want to filter. So you create the role, you select the table, and then you filter the data. You can use the default editor that's there, or you can also use true and false expressions as well. So it looks like this. You create a role. This one I'm calling permissions. I then select the table that I want affected by the role, and then decide on how the table is filtered. And by using user principal name, nothing in between the brackets, right? Just that, it's going to check the user that's logged in. Now, there's still a little bit more to this, so this isn't the full story, but this is basically how it works. This allows you to view all the users currently logged in and the part of the report that they're actually accessing. So by using this, the users will only see what they're allowed to see based on their role. So this is the online service. This is the report and the data model. And when I click on that 3-period button for the data model, this is the menu that I get. From here, we would click on security. So the roles have been established. Then we publish it to the Power BI service. And then this is the service. You go into the model area of the service, or where all your reports and your models are. You click the 3-period button and you head to security. Once you head to security, it looks like this. So you assign different users by typing in their email address and adding different users. Once the user is added, when that user opens up the report looks completely different to the user. This is what it looks like. It restricts it to that user, so the user only sees the data that you're allowing them to see, which would be their name. Next, I want to talk about a DAX command that's called calculate. And this is one of my favorite commands to use. See, a lot of times when you want to sum something up, you get a total, and that's it, right? Think about that. In Excel, when you type in sum, the only options that you really have is to specify a range or a single cell, and then move on to the next number to specify another single cell or another range. So the only options that you really have is what it is that you're actually summing. So you're either summing up a couple of cells or an entire range, but you get the idea. With calculate, we're able to use lots of different expressions like sum, count, min, max, all kinds of different ones, but then be able to filter out what we want. Normally, it would just total it, right? Total, no filter, and then you have to filter the data afterwards. With calculate, it's doing the whole thing in one shot. It is an extremely powerful DAX expression that allows you to use filters so that you're applying the filter to a particular type of expression. It allows you to perform some pretty neat stuff and saves you a lot of steps. To give you a better example, though, here we're creating a measure that's called total bike sales. So in other words, we have a table. That table has a list of all of our sales, and it's got shirts, pants, bikes, tires, there's just everything in that sales table. We only want a total on the bike sales. So what we can do is we can use calculate. We use the sum expression to sum the sales amount, and this is just kind of a normal sum expression. Where the real powerful part comes in is the next part, which is the filter. And what they're doing is they're filtering on a completely different table in a category or in a column called category, and they're filtering out bikes. So obviously, sales and products needs a relationship. And as long as they do, you can use that relationship inside of calculate so that you only get what you want. And then we could take it one step further where we could add another filter based on the year. So now we're only seeing bike sales for 2023. Normally, this would be something that would take you several different steps. But with calculate, it doesn't. And there's lots of different examples of DAX expressions that really help you out in this way so that you're not constantly building different expressions all the time or constantly filtering things separately from the expression. So it creates a dynamic measure. Yeah, you can create dynamic measures that are based on slicers or user input. You can use row level security to implement security rules to restrict the data. And you can perform some pretty complex calculations that wouldn't be something that we'd normally be able to do in something like, say, Excel. Now let's talk about R. Let's talk about R and Python. You can create some custom visuals. Yeah, at some point, you may need to create some custom visuals for some custom data or custom report that you're putting together. And the Power BI SDK allows developers to create custom visuals using R, which is a pretty popular programming language when it comes to creating visuals and data analyzing. Custom visuals can be created and integrated into the Power BI reports seamlessly. So it provides added flexibility, it provides added customization options for the users, and developers can use R packages to create custom visuals with ease. And the visuals, since they're packages, can easily be shared across the Power BI workspace and added to the marketplace if you want other people to be able to utilize them. With the ability to be able to create custom visuals using R, Power BI becomes a much more powerful and versatile tool for data analysis and visualization. Here is some of the building blocks that you're going to need. You're going to need to download the latest version of R, which right now is 4.42 for Windows. Then you're going to also have to download R Studio as well. We'll provide these links in the chat. You're going to need to install both of these, and then you're going to need to open up the desktop version of Power BI. Once you open up the desktop version of Power BI, you'll need to go to File, you'll need to go to Options. Once you head to File and once you head to Options, you'll need to tell it the home directory of all of your R directories. So a lot of times it will detect it. You'll be able to click the drop-down and see the directory. If not, you'll have to put the value in there yourself. But either way, you're going to have to tell it exactly where that directory is. Then, from there, you can go ahead and create something like a scatter chart. This is the script that you would use for a scatter chart. You could add an R visual to your report, and in the visualization pane, you would click the R scripting visual icon. Once you click the icon, you can drag the fields that you want to use into the script, into the value section, and then write your script. The script editor will appear at the bottom of the canvas. You write your code to create the desired visual, and in this case, this would be a scatter chart that looks something like this. Or you could do something like, say, a box plot. So this is an example of creating a box plot. Again, you add the R visual, you drag the fields that you want in, you write the script, you run the script, and then you get your box plot. The flexibility of that is just incredible. And there are some advanced techniques that you can take advantage of too. For instance, there are different advanced R packages that you can use, like ggplot2, very powerful for creating complex and customizable graphics. You've got Plotty, and that package allows you to create some interactive plots. Then you've got Shinny, which integrates Shinny apps with Power BI to create interactive web applications. You can customize those Plot2 visuals. You've got faceting wrap, you've got themes, you've got annotations that can be used. You can even create interactive visuals with Plotty. It converts the ggplot2s and makes an interactive Plotty object using ggplotty. That allows you to create interactive dashboards that have multiple linked plots. You can also integrate the Shinny apps, as I said, where you can use Shinny to create interactive applications that can be embedded into the reports. And this obviously allows for much more dynamic user inputs. Or there is some advanced manipulation, like using RData's manipulation packages to process and to transform data before it even hits the visualization. You can also perform some pretty complex calculations and aggregations that are very difficult to achieve just by using Power BI alone. And Python, really no different, to be honest. It's much the same. Once again, Power BI SDK allows developers to create custom visuals using Python programming language. Now, Python is a very popular language among developers, and it's mainly due to its ease of use and flexibility. With Power BI SDK, the Python libraries, developers can create custom visuals that are seamlessly integrated into Power BI reports, and it provides a lot of flexibility for the end users. Same thing though, there's a few things that you got to do before you just start using Python inside of Power BI Desktop. The first is that you're going to have to install Python and any required libraries. You want to download and install Python from the official website. And the libraries, you can use pip to install the necessary libraries like, say, Panda or Matplotlib. You open your command prompt or terminal, and you run the pip install command to install the different libraries. Then you're going to have to enable Python scripting inside of Power BI Desktop, which means that you're going back to open, you're clicking on File, you're clicking on the options. Once you head to your options, it's under Global Options, and that's where you'll find your Python scripting. This just ensures that the Python installation is installed correctly, so you'll have to point to the path. You'll need to load your data, import the data set, then add the Python visual. In the visualization pane, you've got a Python button that you can click on. Then you just drag the fields in the value section, just like R, and write your script. Once you write your script, you execute it. This is an example of using the matplot library as well as the Panda library, and then creating a data frame for the selected fields. We then create the scatter plot, and this is basically the code for it. There are some advanced techniques that go with Python as well. Once again, you have different libraries like Plotty, Seaborn, and Vulkan. You can customize the visuals with Plotty and create interactive plots, or you could have detailed customization that allows the user to customize that visual just like any other visual that they'd be allowed to customize. You can also create interactive dashboards with Vulkan. You create linked plots that update based on the user interaction. You can have widgets that are available where they can add interactive widgets like sliders and drop downs to control the data and manipulate the data with visuals. You also can create complex transformations using Panda and using the advanced data manipulation and transformation before it even creates the visualization. And there's a ton of features when it comes to performing data cleanup, which is the bane of our existence a lot of times. You can also use interactive learning models like predictive analysis and Sketch-it-learn, so you can train and deploy models directly within Power BI for real-time predictions. And that's not all. You can leverage other parts of Power BI to do things like storytelling. Bookmarks in Power BI Desktop are a very powerful way of being able to tell a story with data. You can create custom views with specific filters, specific interactions, and visual layouts. So it's possible to guide the viewer through a narrative that highlights important insights and important trends, rather than just expecting that the user will understand the data that's in front of them. This can be very useful when you're presenting information to non-technical users that can be more engaged with the story rather than the raw data itself. You can also utilize drill-throughs. Drill-throughs are a great way to offer a very powerful way, actually, of presenting data in an interactive and engaging way. It allows the users to click on specific data points and then navigate a more detailed view of that data point. It's also possible to create a story that guides the viewer, through a deeper understanding of the data. And again, this can be extremely useful to people that are more end user than technical. Some of the different DAX advanced formulas are just a very powerful tool that allows you to create calculations and perform data analysis. The advanced DAX patterns and practices can help users to create dynamic and flexible measures that update based on user input. Some of the best practices would be things like using simple formulas or breaking complex calculations into smaller parts and using variables to help improve the formula readability, but it also helps to improve performance when you're using things like variables. Filtering data is a very important aspect of data analysis in Power BI. The DAX formulas can be used to filter data, as you saw, with specific time periods or other criteria that you might be interested in. The filter function is a very powerful tool that allows you to perform these different filters. So filtering on dates or values becomes very simple and very easy. Best practices for this would include using very simple filters, defining relationships between tables that needs to be done, and avoiding secular references so that you're not getting different error messages depending on the filter that you choose. Performance tuning is also something else that's quite important. It's actually a very important aspect of creating fast and efficient DAX queries in Power BI Desktop. Some of the best practices for performance include avoiding complex calculations in calculated columns. Using correct data types for columns is extremely important, and just not leaving everything as general. That's not a good idea. You can use correct data types and improve the performance, but also it opens you up to a whole other set of DAX calculations because you chose the right data type. And DAX formulas, they can be used to optimize query folding, which reduces the amount of data processing that is done by a query. Optimizing the performance of DAX queries is essential for creating these fast reports. It's important that you choose the right data model, minimize the calculated columns, filter the data by using things like calculate table. And these are just a few ways of being able to improve your query performance. With these tips, you can create reports that are both accurate and extremely quick to load. The one that I mentioned, calculate table, is a very powerful function that allows you to create some complex calculations, but still perform some advanced data analysis using the desktop version of Power BI. It also allows you to evaluate a table expression in a modified filter context. So it creates a new filtered table. This can be really useful for creating dynamic measures that update based on the user inputs, or for filtering data based on specific criteria. In order to get the most out of it, it's important to understand exactly how it works in conjunction with other DAX filters or functions like filter or SumX. There are tons of additional tips and tricks that can help improve the performance of a DAX query. Avoiding things like the distinct function, using variables to store expressions, and partitioning tables can all greatly improve the query performance of your reports. With the right strategy and approach, it's important and possible to create fast, efficient, and effective reports using DAX. When it comes to time series, the time series analysis is a powerful tool that helps to identify patterns and trends in data over time. Power BI provides several built-in filters for time analysis, including forecasting and regression analysis. By analyzing historical data, the time series analysis can predict future data trends. DAX is also a very powerful language for creating complex calculations inside of Power BI. It incorporates historical data, it can incorporate trends into the model, and it can be used for predictive analysis, as I said. And by using it for predictive analysis, the users can make better decisions based on those predictions. The time series is particularly useful for analyzing the sales data, especially when seasonal trends are present. And by using the built-in functionality for sales analysis, businesses can make data-driven decisions about their inventory and their different sales strategies. The predictive analysis, as I mentioned, is a very powerful tool for forecasting. It uses DAX formulas to create predictive models that companies can use to base decisions on. And with more accurate predictions about financial performance, companies can develop strategies for growth and optimize their success. Data flows are an essential component of Power BI that allows you to create automated data processing and transformation. By creating these data flows, you can process and transform data from a variety of different sources and schedule them to refresh automatically. And obviously, this results in more accurate and up-to-date reports and visuals for your end users. It also provides some powerful AI insights that help you to gain deeper insights into the data. These include sentiment analysis, key driver analysis, anomaly detection, but in order to use these, you do have to be connected and you do need a Power BI license in order to use these. But by leveraging these AI features, you can uncover hidden patterns and trends in your data that might actually go undetected. The automated data flows can also be used to pre-process and transform the data before it's loaded into Power BI. So, for example, you could use a data flow to pre-process sales data, calculate key performance indicators like revenue and profit. Once the data has been pre-processed in a data flow, it can be used to create visuals and reports inside of Power BI so that you're only looking at the essential data and not loading needless data into a report. AI insights can also be used to gain further insights into customer behavior or preferences. For example, you could use it to analyze a customer feedback database where it identifies different areas for improvement. And by leveraging these powerful AI features, businesses can make data driven decisions that improve the customer satisfaction and keep them coming back. When it comes to advanced sharing in Power BI, it's a powerful tool that allows users to share reports and dashboards with internal and external users. And by using the advanced sharing, users can control who has access to their content and what level of access they actually have. It's particularly useful in organizations where multiple users need access to the same data to make different decisions. The ultimate is to build Power BI apps. So once you've created these dashboards and all these different reports, you can actually package these into an application that provides an easy, simple, and secure way of being able to share content within the organization. Apps can be produced to provide specific reports and dashboards that are relevant to a very specific group of users. It can also be published to the Power BI store, making it simple and easy for users to download these apps and use these apps. The workspaces are really just a way of being able to collaborate and share content with team members. They can be set up with different levels of access permission and allow users to control the views and edit the content. They can also be used to publish reports and dashboards to a much broader audience. Using external embedding in Power BI, it allows it allows the users to embed their content into external or websites, so external applications and websites. And this feature just provides users with a way to share their content with external users without actually having to give them access to the Power BI report. External embedding can also be used to customize the look and the feel of the external website or the external application that's available. So, an example would be an insurance company that shares a Power BI report. An insurance company, for example, might use Power BI to help its agents track sales and monitor customer satisfaction. A retail company might create a Power BI app to share with its store managers that allows them to track the sales and the inventory in real time. A healthcare provider might decide to build an application that would share a Power BI dashboard with physicians, providing them with insights into patient outcomes and their quality of care, and again, providing them this information in real time. So, in conclusion, Power BI is a pretty powerful application. It can do some very complicated things and do it in some very complicated ways. But there's even more to Power BI.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I tell you, I always learn so much at our webinars. I personally really enjoyed the row security and the bookmarks for storytelling and groups for security. And as you said, there's still so much more. So I want to show everyone something on our site first. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat because we'll take them in a minute. Perfect. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen. So can everyone see my screen? If you are interested in more information about Power BI and learning Power BI, if you are on our website and you go to the menu and go down to Power BI, we offer 4 courses. So we have fundamentals. I mentioned public training. So these are the public dates anyone can join. Again, it's for individuals and small groups. And you can register online. If you want a private session or to customize your session, you can contact us with private training. The Becoming a Pro course goes over the parameters and filters that Greg talked about, and pretty much everything else is in our more advanced course. All these courses are 2 days or 12 hours each, but we also offer all that information in a 5-day boot camp. Sometimes you have people come and they want to learn everything about Power BI. Greg also talked about Power Automate, which we do have Power Automate training. And again, same thing if you wanted to do a more advanced Power Automate course or maybe really customize it to what you're using in Power BI, you can just contact us and we can work with you on that. Susan put in the link, the links to download R Studios, because you have to have R Studios to use R, and Python. If you are interested in a standalone R course or Python course, just reach out to us directly. We're super easy to contact on our website. There's even a chat. It's manned by a live person during business hours, or you can contact us at admin@greatcanadiantraining.ca. And then just one other thing I want to show you is we are releasing free resources all the time, everything from blog articles on technology, soft skills, how to organize training. We have lots of free downloads, best shortcuts, things like that. But please feel free to join us at our next webinar. And I can't believe I'm going to say in 2025. We're going to do time management meeting Outlook. So if you are having uncontrollable inbox and you want to learn some strategies and put in some processes to manage that, please feel free to sign up. It's all free. And as I said, within 2 business days, Susan will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording, the handout, the other webinar that was on more basics of fundamentals. Susan will also include the links for our studios and Python also in it. So Greg, let's answer questions.
Excellent. So, what is the most common issue when sharing reports? Yeah, there's a couple, and they all have to do with security. One of the issues that you do run into is security issues. So, anytime that you share reports, it needs to be published to the Power BI service. That's number one. And number two is you're going to have to click on the security. So, whatever model it is that you shared with them, both the model and the report, they're going to need to be added to that security portion of it, unless you've already shared the entire workspace with them. So, anybody that is part of the workspace automatically has access to everything. But if you're sharing it with a broader audience, you're going to need to make sure that you've changed the security level so that they have access to the reports and access to the models. One of the easier ways of doing this is using dynamic row level security, but also building applications. So really consider building applications, and that'll make the whole process a lot easier and a lot simpler for people. I'll let Joy answer this one. Do you have any specific courses on data modeling Power Query within Power BI?
So actually, I would say if you would like more information, reach out to us and we can kind of follow up and discuss that. And we could probably do a custom course that focuses on those topics.
And then, the boot camp covers a lot of modeling and Power Query stuff. So, if you really want a very complete course from beginning to end on what you can do with Power BI, but also, how to get these things up and running, the Power BI boot camp is excellent for that.
So I actually have a question. Go
What's the
ahead.
maximum number of relationships you should have in a data model? As few as possible. When there's too many relationships, you're creating a very complex model, and Power BI has to keep track of all of that. So when you build your reports, only pull the data in that you're going to use for the report. Don't pull in any extra fields. Don't pull in any extra tables. and try and keep those relationships at a minimum, along with all the other tables and fields.
Actually, I have a question. So how does Copilot factor into Power BI?
The way that Copilot factors into Power BI really has to do with, not just analyzing the data, which it can provide some interesting insights. There's lots of stuff that you can do with Copilot to analyze your data. But I find the real benefit is when I'm building DAX statements. Trying to build the DAX statements can be a little bit confusing and a little bit complicated sometimes. And I love being able to take my DAX statement and ask Copilot where I'm going wrong in the DAX statement. That for me is worth the price of admission. It's worth the licensing fee for Copilot. So for myself, it saves me hours of troubleshooting and also helps me to better understand some of the DAX statements that I'm working with. Not constantly reading stuff and going through different examples is definitely helpful, but sometimes you need a more tailored help, and that's where I find Copilot comes in.
Okay, that's good to know. I actually have another question. So when you get into this level of Power BI, is Tableau still considered a competitor at this level?
Absolutely. In fact, this is where the two really start to compete because trying to do the same things inside of Tableau can be extremely difficult and very manual. It really is. Having Copilot kind of help guide you through analyzing and writing some of your scripts is extremely helpful, especially when we're talking about things like R and Python. Again, you don't want to spend a ton of time debugging a script. So having something like Copilot really sets it apart from Tableau.
Nice. Nice. Actually, one other question I have. So you mentioned some of the packages you can get for R and Python and stuff. Do they charge extra fees for those packages, or are those usually free to download?
No, those are free to download, and most of them are available on GitHub.
Okay, good. Thanks. That's good to know. Okay, so before we end for today, were there any more questions? There's one there for you, Greg.
Yeah, when is it best to use a custom column in the Power Query window versus using DAX? I always say closest to the report. So a lot of times when I'm building different things, I want to keep it close to the report. But when we're talking about creating a custom column, it's probably best to create the custom column inside of Power Query. And you can still use DAX inside of Power Query, but it's best to do it before it actually hits the report so that you're not importing needless data or information that you would just never use. So depending on what kind of custom column we're talking about, you want to make sure that you add that before it actually goes into the report. And that way, it's just making the report a lot faster and a lot quicker to respond to the users.
Thanks. Yes, it is lots to learn, Greg. I feel like we're also just kind of scratching the surface here, right?
Yeah, you really are. And with Microsoft updating this tool all the time, you just never are finished learning what this tool does.
Yep, I have absolutely no doubt. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you were able to take away something so that you can use in your future Power BI usage. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.